because at that job, I would work like 12-hour days, 5 days a week. It was just like, I was just ready to move on from that situation. So it was like, now I get to work from home in this house, that I worked for, and get to be with my family. Like, it's just like it's like, even though it's been, 6-7 months, sometimes it still doesn't feel real, because it's like everything that I've ever wanted. It's just crazy.
This is Techie Personal Finance Bootcamp, where I help tech professionals in their 20s and 30s balance a great life today without sacrificing their future possibilities. I'm your host, Lucas Caceres, certified financial planner and founder of Level Up Financial Planning, where I help educate, coach, and build strategies with my clients to help them take their financial confidence to the next level. Here's an important compliance disclosure. This podcast is for informational purposes only and are not to be considered recommendations. It is recommended you consult your trusted financial professional before implementing any information obtained from the Techie Personal Finance Bootcamp. Welcome to Techie Personal Finance Bootcamp. I'm super excited because I have Will Johnson with me today, and Will is a self-taught developer who landed his first tech role because of a tweet. Listen to this awesome episode as Will shares what it was like breaking into tech and being a part of the awesome team with Egghead. Thanks for coming on the show today, Will. I'm super excited to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so the thing that really fascinates me and why I have my guests come on the show is to share your journey into tech. So do you mind kind of giving us the cliff notes as far as what it was like, the process you took to get into tech?
Sure, not a problem. So basically, I went the self-taught route. I was working at pretty much factories for like the last 6 years and like call centers before that. And, none of those opportunities seemed like much room for growth. I have, at the time when I started, I think I had 5 kids or 4. I have 6 now. And, I just knew that, I wanted something better for, this family of 8 of mine. So I started looking into different ways to make more money so I can, provide them a more comfortable life. Came across web development, did some self-studying, and then I started just networking like crazy, going to Twitter, going to conferences, going to meetups, going to workshops, mentoring, like anything I could do that was involved with tech, like here in my city of Kansas City, I got involved in, and kind of did like bi-directional. Like if I did something in real life, I would post it on Twitter, and then people who see me in real life would see it on Twitter. And just created all these connections for me, and I ended up getting a job at Egghead, which is a web development education company.
Yeah, awesome.
Working remotely for them. So it's been pretty cool. And that was like over maybe 8 to 10 month span.
So it took you 8 to 10 months from kind of that self-taught initially diving in to get in that opportunity with Egghead.
I would say initially from like going like online and networking. But probably from the moment when I was like, okay, I want to learn this, I probably say like 1.5 years.
Okay. So once you actually were actively looking for a job and opportunity, does that sound about right?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So what was it that made you like find tech and be like, oh, like this is the thing that I want to kind of devote my time to? Because I know it's not an easy process, especially if you go the self-taught route. Like I'm sure you probably banged your head against the wall a lot more than someone that has a little bit more of a path outlined for them.
Yeah, for sure. So what made me want to get into it, I've always been into like, computers or electronics. I remember when they first rolled out the iMacs at school, like in, I don't know, like 4th grade, the ones that had the colored back. And I was like, oh yeah, I want one. So, but growing up, especially in the 90s, it was like, oh, to work in computers, you got to be like a math whiz, and like, had like all these myths and stuff that, I just never really looked into. So I just always thought that like, oh, this isn't for me. And then even when like I started like trying to do things to make like more money for my family, it was always like tech related. Like I started a YouTube channel. Then I was like doing like graphic design type stuff on Photoshop. I was learning about like SEO and stuff. So it was like, I was always tech adjacent, right?
Yeah.
And then I still think about, I always thought you had to go to college for it as well. And I'm like, college is super expensive. I can't afford that. So I ended up coming across Udemy, and it was like, a course for $9 I'm like, $9 to learn web development. I was like, well, I can afford to lose $9.
Yeah.
So it basically started with me seeing the Udemy course that was on sale, and that started like my journey into it because it felt like, like I said, oh, I didn't have nothing to lose. Like going to college for 4 years and having all that debt with my family and being like the only person working, that felt like a really huge gamble, but I really wasn't prepared for it. But, $9, I could take that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just the cost, right? It's that time commitment, and kids take some time too. So yeah, you have a few more than I do. So you probably know that more than I do at this point. But yeah, so what were all the different tools? You started with Udemy. Was there like a handful of tools, or was Udemy like that was what provided you that whole path?
I use a ton of stuff. Like
Yeah.
the more, because once you get into something, you see the rabbit hole is way deeper than what you thought.
Yep.
But yeah, I use Udemy courses. I use this one course called Practical JavaScript. I use Team Treehouse.
Yeah.
Because I pretty much just I did it twice. So I did like the boot camp that was on Udemy, and then I went back and did the same stuff over just so I can that's when I felt like I understood it. With just about looking at it, like if I would look at a function or something or an object, I kind of, okay, that's what that is. And I think doing it twice helped it, so for me personally, helped it solidify.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case for most people. Like once you go through a process, you're just trying to survive and okay, this is what I have to do to get to the next thing, and I'll be done with this and don't have to think about it ever again. But really, that once you are able to go back and it's more second nature, kind of more muscle reflex in a lot of ways. And it's that helps build up the confidence. Oh, I actually know it. I'm not just going through the motions type. So perfect. That's awesome. What has been the toughest part of your journey?
The toughest part, I'd probably say, is really probably two things. The one was just the whole trying to get a job thing. It was even ones that were good opportunities, or I had a connect on the inside or something like that.
Yep.
It would always end with oh, you don't have any experience, and no matter what I could show, what I had on GitHub, no matter what blog post I had, I may not be the world's foremost expert, but I do know this stuff and I feel like I can contribute. But it was no one wanted to look unless you had experience. That was super, super frustrating.
Yeah.
And then the second part is knowing where to put your time, right? Because people say, oh, you need to learn a lot to have job security or et cetera. But it's when you're trying to put food on the table and get out of a situation that you're not a fan of, you don't have the time to learn everything. You don't want to, you don't, it's you can, but who realistically, I'd rather focus on trying to be good at one thing instead of being mediocre at 30 things.
Yeah.
So that was frustrating too. Okay, what can I put my time in to know that this will, I can help put my family up in a better position, because it's just so much different stuff out here. And then you might, say if you're spending a lot of time learning React, and then you see all the jobs in your area is hiring for Angular, and you're oh man. So
you're gonna have to move your whole big family somewhere else, and that gets tricky, right? It's one thing if it's just you. It gets trickier when you add a spouse, partner. Then it gets super tricky when you have kids. And then the older the kids are, then the trickier it is too. So lots of logistics, responsibility, and I'm sure it's not easy to always navigate. Well, what's the kind of cost of going down this rabbit hole if it's not going to actually produce? Is that something that you notice after the fact? Did you already kind of head down one way and then start realizing there's not nearly the opportunities I thought I would? Then you had to kind of back up and then go down another path, or did you actively kind of look ahead and research what's going to give you the best in your kind of local area?
Luckily, I didn't have to go through that. I kind of thought it initially, but since, I did all the networking and stuff, I kind of learned from the people who already had jobs, and they kind of was learn React. Kind of it's what they were like. It was learn React, you'll be fine. Because that's what all of them worked on. And, this was different, from different meetups, not necessarily like the same one, and they were all saying the same thing, and they were all local here in Kansas City. So I was like, okay, then this is what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah, and so you're saying you found Meetup or these meetings, right? Were they all on Meetup, or was there other places you were finding them to go and have these connections and networking with other people?
Yeah, they were mostly on Meetup, but some I found like through Eventbrite. Like I used to go on Eventbrite
Okay.
and search for like tech. I think I would just type in either tech or development. I really can't remember. It's been a while. And like go to any events that was like related to programming on there. And then like I would also look for, and some stuff I can't even remember how I even found it, but like I would find like different workshops. Like they had like an Angular girls workshop that I went to teach women Angular. And so just different stuff like that. So like they all wasn't on Meetup, but I would like go to different sites like looking for events that I could go to and meet people at.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Angular one, and so a lot of people I think don't realize this, but a lot of like the women events or any particular like niche oriented meetup or event, a lot of times they are very inclusive, so they'll allow anyone. So just because they have
Mm-hmm.
that name brand, and sure that will be probably a majority of the people that are there, but I know I've gone to women who code meetups and things like that, and they're like, yeah, of course, come tell everyone and anyone. Like, obviously, you have to support the mission of that group that you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
joining and be respectful of that. But I think that's a common misconception in a lot of ways that just because there's an event, because some people they might be in a more remote area where that maybe that's the only type of event for them to go, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's the only thing that works logistically, and they're like, oh, can't go because it's not for me. But I think you bringing that up reminds me that that's a good opportunity to, it doesn't hurt to send a message, be like, hey, is it cool if I show up? I don't want to make anyone feel weird or
Yeah.
awkward. I
Yeah.
know that's what I did, and they're like, oh no, definitely come through. So how would you kind of describe, once you started going and finding those networks, did it seem, how did you feel just kind of being like a new fish in like a big old pond or a big old ocean going into it? Were you scared at all, or was it something like I'm just so hungry, I can't even let the imposter syndrome or any type of fear seep in, otherwise I won't go, so I just need to focus on the hungriness and why I want to be here?
That's a good question. Really, it was a little bit of both. So, like when I first started, it was like the what you said, the latter part of I'm just focused on being hungry. But then, like once I started talking to people and like hearing the stuff that they talked about, it was kind of like, oh man, I'm like getting in deep, because I can't remember like a specific conversation, but just you just hearing these people talking, you're just sitting there like with a deer in the headlights. Like I have no idea what they're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you're kind of having flashbacks, like you said, to when you were younger and thinking about the iMac and stuff like that. Like, oh, only a certain like secret society gets to work on this cool
yeah,
stuff. And is that kind of where you're having flashbacks to that thought when they had that crazy conversation? You're like, holy moly, I don't know what's going on.
yeah. I mean, literally, it was like I understood like every third word. Like the whole conversation was just way out of my league. But what I did notice though is like the more I showed up and was consistent, the
Yeah.
more people would pull me aside and help me with these concepts. Like I remember, like I did not understand GitHub at all, and I remember watching like a tutorial on it. I'm like, it's for I don't for it like now it's like so easy. I don't have no idea why I didn't understand it, but
Yeah.
like it was so complicated. So one of my I say mentors named Eric, he actually invited me to his job on lunch and like walked me through how it worked. And like, I'll never forget that. And I like to this day, I can't say I wouldn't understand it if it wasn't for him, but I know back then that I was struggling. But like that day of just going up there for that 30 minutes helped me understand and be able to use GitHub. So I think so like I was scared when that stuff was happening, but the more I, like I said, showed up, like the easier it got and the more help I was able to get to kind of understand what was being talked about.
Yeah, the picture started becoming a little bit clearer, and that probably made you excited, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
I got you guys now. Like I'm catching.
Yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned Egghead. And so I started seeing that on Twitter, and I think that's probably where you came across like my purview, and I knew that you existed. But yeah, since I don't know who I connected with, but all of a sudden, Egghead is kind of everywhere. Can you describe what they're about a little bit more? I know you mentioned it at the intro a little bit, but yeah, just describe that a little bit more because it looks like it could be a good resource for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a web development education company. It's for like, it's not necessarily for new developers, it's for because it assumes a lot of knowledge. So you kind of
Yep.
want to be someone in your career because they don't do a lot of, because it's video courses that people watch.
Yep. Yep.
So they don't do a lot of explaining of the basics. It's assumed that you know these things. So it kind of just gets to like the exact meat of whatever you're trying to do. It's not like a lot of hi, my name's Steve, and on Tuesday I went to Kroger's and got some pineapple, and today we're going to learn about React. It's straight to, okay, you have to take this data, put it inside this API and pull it out or something like that. It's
Yeah.
very to the point. So lately what we've been doing is just trying to engage the broader community, because we work like really closely with the instructors
Yeah.
to make sure that the material is like very learnable, and that people are getting the outcomes that they desire. So it's not just like it's not like how some places you're like, oh, just go and teach. Like you get like a lot of coaching on what they call an instructional design. So
Oh,
they get
cool.
like a lot of coaching on that and how to engage learners and make sure that they're learning things. And so we do that with the instructors, and now we're trying to work with like the learners and like the people who are taking the courses and allowing them to be involved, whether that's doing like live programming sessions where we're like working on like a real thing.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like it's like you're in the over the shoulder of a professional developer, just watching how they work, doing like chats with instructors, doing like a lot of things to just get more and more people involved and communicate and share knowledge. So that's
Yeah,
kind of like
more
our
integration,
focus
more
has been.
collaboration.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet.
And that's
Awesome,
been
man.
pretty fun.
Yeah, and so what is your role specifically with them? Like how are you adding value to the team and kind of what does your day look like?
Sure. So I kind of do, I guess, a dual role, I guess.
Yeah.
So I help with their tech stack is Ruby on Rails. So I'm learning Ruby on Rails to contribute as a dev, but also I'm like over a lot of the community stuff. So like a lot of the events that we have, whether it's the Egghead talks where we do like the remote conference talks, or
Yeah.
if we have like the Twitter chats or the mob programming. I even had an idea to where like when a instructor releases a new course, I was like, hey, maybe we should have like a launch party for courses. And they were like, oh, that's a good idea. So like now we're going to like start having like launch parties like live on stream for people to
Awesome.
get like a sneak peek of the course and ask any questions they may have. And so I just want to do like more things to like, help the instructors and people kind of get the things that they're doing broadcasted out to the broader community.
Yeah, yep, that's important. And yeah, I think you guys are doing a pretty good job at that. Like I said, you guys pop up all over my Twitter, whether it's your postings or just other people kind of sharing it. Uh, I used to be a heavy LinkedIn user, still use it, but yeah, this probably for the last 6 or 7 months, switched to Twitter. And I think the thing I've seen there is a lot more interaction, a lot more people like willing to just kind of share and hit those types of buttons. Where on LinkedIn, people are very focused. They're going to LinkedIn for a reason. And
Yeah.
so if if your stuff doesn't like line up, they don't really have time to read through it. They don't have time to like or share. Where I think on Twitter, people are a lot more willing to just kind of flick their finger and help people out and kind of spread
Yeah.
messages too that they think other people could enjoy. Do you guys promote that kind of across multiple platforms, or is it mainly Twitter that you guys use?
Mainly Twitter, and then we have a Slack channel, and then
Oh,
a
cool.
community forum as well. But Twitter's like I think the metaphor we use is like Twitter's like it's like we're out in the woods, trying to grab sticks and bring them home so we can light the fires. So
Yep.
Twitter is like where we kind of go out and search, and then we bring it back to bring everybody back to Egghead.
Yeah, that's awesome. Perfect. So I know you have a few exciting things kind of on the horizon. One of them being an ebook. What describe to us what the ebook's going to be about, and if it has a title, definitely share that as well.
Sure. So it's going to be called Break Into Tech with Twitter. But it can be used for it could be any social platform, but basically it's going to be like going through the methodology I have of like how I use Twitter to break in to tech and got opportunities, because it's not about like getting a bunch of followers or anything like that. It's kind of like the hows and the whys, like what you can do and why it works, like what mentally goes on to like when you do this and why it works. So I think it would be different than most. I mean, I haven't read a lot of social media books, but it seems like most of them focus on like, follower count, and that's not really what I'm on. I'm more about, like I say this a lot when I talk about this, but I'd rather like if I was had a Twitter, I'd rather have 10 people that I talk to every day and we share information and we share, goals and networks than 2,000 people that I never talk to, right? Like the number really doesn't matter. I'm more focused on how can I reach out to people that I admire and build close relationships with them. So that's what the book is about.
Awesome. So that's really funny. I had no clue, or maybe I did. I think maybe I have seen a post, but I didn't put that together. But when we're talking about the Twitter aspect right before I asked you about the book, so that's funny that just led in perfect to that. So did Twitter actually lead to your position with the Egghead?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, awesome. Describe kind of what you think, how and why that worked for you.
I don't know for sure, but what I think is, well, basically the story is that one day I was like super frustrated. I had applied at a whole bunch of jobs and I was just really, really frustrated. So, I did, a relatable tweet. It wasn't on purpose. It was just me literally venting. Like, I was like, I really feel like I'm ready for a developer job and I'm not really sure, what is it going to take for me to get one, or I can't remember the exact wording, but people like, it's like I wasn't complaining. People could tell that I was not happy.
Yep.
So a lot of people replied, but the co-founder of Egghead actually replied, and he gave me some advice on like, what I should do. Like I should start blogging and things like that. So I asked her, like, could we schedule a call and talk, like just for more in depth? And he actually said, yeah. And this was like back in, I don't know, May or March or something. And we just like kept in contact through then. And, he would follow me on Twitter and we would see what each other was doing.
Yeah.
And then I started like working part-time, doing like notes for courses. That's another thing that we do. We provide like notes that are already taken for courses. So when people take them, they can kind of reference those, just make another easier step, because it's good to take notes. So might as well have some already done for you. And then, then later, a couple of weeks after that, he asked to bring me on full time. And I was like, oh man, like, and it was through, Twitter DM. It was crazy.
That is crazy. Holy moly. What was the process like? Obviously you posted that Twitter message or post because you were kind of frustrated with kind of everything going on. Like, what was it like outside of like the post? Like, were you like super stressed, super hopeful, and then going like through like a whole roller coaster of emotions, or what was that like? And then once you actually got this first foot in the door, like what was your emotions at that point?
Yeah, when I posted that, man, I was definitely, I would say roller coaster, because like that the job, the reason I posted is because like this job, I had 2 referrals. I know I killed the phone interview. I know I did, because I researched the company so heavy. And I brought up projects that they worked on with different companies. Like, and I'm not trying to brag, but I could tell in her voice that she was like impressed with the research that I did. I really put like a lot into it. Someone wrote me a letter of recommendation, like a lot. When I'm like, yo, this is a shoe-in. The pay, she was like, how much you're expecting? And I threw in like 10,000 more than, what I would, settle for. And they were like, that's exactly what we offer. And I was like, so I'm thinking, this job is it, right?
Yep.
And then she said she'll call me in a week. I didn't hear anything. So I emailed her and they were like, oh, well, we talked to the dev team and they said you didn't have any experience. I was like, what? So I was just like, that one like destroyed me. So that's when I did
it. Yep.
And
just you describing that, I can see huge letdown. And Yeah, I'm sure that happens a lot. There's things like that happen in life too, like outside of employment, where it's like, oh, dude, that was perfect and amazing. Like how did it not go the way I was
Yeah.
totally expecting it to? So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because yeah, it sounds like a huge punch in the gut, and obviously you lived to talk about it and kind of share the success afterwards. So once that story changed, or you kind of overcame that challenge, like how does it feel now, being employed and doing some of the stuff that you love, and then also being a part of a company that is like specific to helping other people kind of level up their knowledge and experience in their respective careers?
It is surreal. Every day I wake up with a lot of like extreme gratitude, because we moved into like the last house we stayed in was like 900 square feet. We moved into like a bigger house. Like we planned on moving before I got the job
Yeah.
with Egghead, but it's like now I get to, because at that job I would work like 12-hour days, 5 days a week. It was just like, I was just ready to move on from
Yeah.
that situation. So it was like now I get to work from home in this house, that I worked for, and get to be with my family. Like it's just like it's like, even though it's been 6-7 months, sometimes it still doesn't feel real, because it's like everything that I've ever wanted. It's just crazy.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, self-taught route is not easy from what I hear. And so I I definitely commend you on it. And I'm glad that yeah, you didn't give up after that horrible situation that kind of occurred, because that happens to some people. That's why I have this podcast. That's why there's a lot of podcasts like this that exist, is because people need to know that it's not straight line. Like nothing in life is perfect and straight through. Like you had to go through
Hmm.
some of this crappy stuff to really live that kind of surreal life and be like, holy moly, I finally made it. And obviously this is still kind of early in your career. There's a lot of cool moments still ahead of you, but to get that kind of first big, huge win is worth sharing and worth telling your story about too, because yeah, a lot of people are on the other side of that right now. And we're kind of about to hit a recession. So like people need to know that
Hmm.
even though things might not be going your way right now, that can change, and you can still kind of take control of stuff. And it's just a matter of yeah, keeping going, and yeah, being able to vent sometimes and share stuff. Maybe depending on what it is, you might want to filter it a little bit. But yours seemed like it was
Yeah.
nice and professionally worded enough to have a CEO reach out to you, which is pretty awesome. You also started doing a podcast for fun, and also because you like hearing about other people's stories. Tell us where people can find your podcast.
Sure. So it's anchor.fm/infinite loop.
Perfect. Yep. And I'll make sure we get that in the show notes. Describe the conversations that you've had so far. I know you've had a couple of episodes.
Yeah, for sure. So mainly it's basically talking to people of how they use like social media to either get their job or enhance their careers.
Oh,
So it's
sweet.
for if someone already is a dev, like how did social media help them like get to the next level? And then if for like they were like a boot camp graduate, what did they do to, use like how I did use social media to get in? So it's kind of like people sharing the same kind of story that I have. So another way, so I can like show people like, because a lot of times like if I tell like my nephews and stuff, man, get this Udemy course, I'll buy it for you, like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
can change your life. It'd be so I can share these, like I share these podcast episodes with them, like, hey, I'm not an anomaly, like there's other people who did this too. So I share those episodes, they be like, so they can hear from other people who did it too.
Yeah, because it's like you said, it's very unknown that you don't have to be like a NASA scientist to work on computers, work on internet, work on apps, all these fun, work on video games. Like there's so many cool ways you can use this knowledge. And obviously they have different languages and whatnot that you have to
Hmm.
focus and learn on depending on what you're wanting to work on. But yeah, like so many people, especially the younger people like you and myself, when we're in school, like this isn't for us. Like we didn't know anyone that did those things. And once you start getting through life, and I know you mentioned on Twitter that you're like 34, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm 34. I did the math.
Yeah, yep. And So the reason why that resonated with me is because I'm 33 now, but for the last 2 years, I keep thinking I'm 30 for some reason. So something happened to me as well. And that's why that stands out in my mind. But basically, like, if we wanted to change careers and just like you did, like, I would think like you had to go to school for that. And that's just kind of what the thought process is. And now I know a lot about boot camps. I would think like, oh, that's the only way to go. But you're self-taught. And I've had a couple of other people that I've been interviewing recently, self-taught. And it's like, there's a lot of different ways to get in once you kind of peel it back, and all of it comes down to work and persevering. But I think a lot of people just don't even know like that these kind of roads are possible. And it's not like that for all careers, but for tech, it very much is. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we close out the show, do you have a favorite time travel movie?
Time travel movie?
Yeah.
Does Avengers Endgame count?
Yep, they time travel. So for that, they had to get all the stones together, or they just needed the time stone, right? So basically, let's say you had that, you can go back and tell your younger self something to kind of feel good about the future, or maybe even to do like a course correction. Like, what would it be that you'd go back and tell your younger self?
I would go back to when I was doing people's MySpace pages. Because I had no idea that was like, I thought it was just for MySpace. Yep. I did not know that that's how you actually made websites.
Yep.
So I'd have went back to there. First, I would have said charge people. Like, I was doing it for free because I thought it was fun. So I first would have said charge people, because this is, you're solving a problem because they don't want to do it. And then I would say learn about is this as much as possible and get a job in it. I'm like, stick with this. Like, it's fun and you can use it to, really, boost your future up.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Well, I'll make sure I get all the show notes with the links to your ebook, because I imagine that will be out by the time we post this episode to be live, and as well as the Infinite Loop podcast as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to Techie Personal Finance Bootcamp. You can find show notes by visiting levelupfinancialplanning.com and finding the podcast page. You'll also be able to find strategy guides, videos, and cheat sheets to help you take your financial confidence to the next level. If you feel this episode has added a ton of value for you, please rate and share this with friends and colleagues. Catch you next time on Techie Personal Finance Bootcamp.